Okay, welcome to part two of qualitative data analysis. So during this lecture, we are going to get more into some different approaches based on qualitative genres, and we are going to take a look at first round coding methods if you choose to use coding. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is, of course, perusal 6, our second perusal on data analysis, again, focusing in on approaches by qualitative genre and first round coding. So this is what we are going to be reading today, and I want to show you a little bit about these texts and just give you a little bit of an overview to help ground you. So firstly is the coding manual. This is by Saldana. So this is something that you will see highly cited, and it's a great go-to if you want to find. He cites the references, the primary sources. If you want to know more about a particular approach, it's kind of like an encyclopedia of coding. So it's a great place to look through. He has, of course, theories of codings, but then once he gets into the code, so I'll show you that in a moment. So that's one of the books, the coding manual. So in perusal, I put his introduction to the chapter on first round coding, just a few pages so you can hear his philosophy and perspective on coding. And then you can choose one of those to read more about. I don't know how, he probably has over 20 types. And so whatever type that you choose is just a couple pages, so you can choose that. The next text is Gerbich. She wrote Approaches to Qualitative Analysis, and so she has it organized by qualitative genre. So you will choose one chapter that's most relevant to you to read. And then, of course, you need to, this is where you can share your reading about from your bibliographic library. So 2 empirical articles within the qualitative tradition that you are aligning your study to. So these pieces that I'm asking you to read, they don't have to be necessarily about your content, but they need to use the same method that you're interested in. So if you are interested in narrative analysis, you might find a similar study. Maybe it's a slightly different topic, but it has some similarities, but you could use it to look at their methodology, particularly their data analysis. So that's great. These are articles that you can cite in your chapter 3, in your methodology chapter. Again, even if the content is slightly different or significantly different, but still in education, you can use it as an example of how this qualitative approach has been used. So this might be something that you've already read, but you can go ahead and make your connections in the Gerbich chapter that you read. So let me show you these texts. Now, I put the link here so you have the access to these. So this is the famous coding manual. I don't know what edition this is. Okay, so this must be the 2nd edition, is that right? Okay, so this one is from 2016, so does it say 3rd edition? Okay, so there might probably is a more recent version. So just be careful when you cite it. If you are using this text, that you use this version, or if you have the updated version, make sure you have the correct page number. So as you can see here, he even has a website to go to. So he does an introduction to codes and coding. That's 43 pages. I didn't assign that, but if you're interested, you have the whole book here to look into. Again, writing analytic memos about narrative and visual data. So for those of you doing narrative analysis, you might want to take a look here. Again, I didn't assign this, but this is a great place if you are doing narrative analysis to think about how you can tailor your analytic memos to that. Now, first cycle coding, so that's the introduction that we can read. As you can see, that chapter goes all the way to page 211. So we are just reading like the first, I think, 10 to 13 pages of that. Then he has after the first cycle coding. So once you've done that, what to do next? Then second cycle coding, which we'll do in the next lecture, and then after second cycle coding. So, and then lots of appendices here. So this is how the book is structured. Now, I want to go into the first cycle coding. Yes. So here's first cycle coding. So we're going to be reading this part. So here are all of the different types that he includes. So I want you to, after you read the introduction, choose one of these to read about in depth. And the in depth is only a couple pages. So let's say, for instance, that you are interested in emotion coding. Maybe you're looking at emotions. You could read about that, or maybe values coding. If you're interested in like beliefs, what does someone value? So once he gets into describing the different types of codes, this is what it looks like. So here is one, like magnitude coding. So he starts off with magnitude coding sites. These are primary sources. So if you are interested in this type of coding, these are the authors and the references to go look at it to read more about it. A brief description of it. What are great applications? Like what types of research questions and studies it's great for. Then he gives you an example. And then shows you how the analysis works. If there is computer programming, he shows you that. And then he gives you some recommendations and then notes. That's it. So there is subcoding. I was going to try to show like values coding, in vivo coding. I know we talked about that. So you can see Corbin and Strauss, the Glasser, the primary sources here. So if you wanted to read about this in vivo coding, which, you know, you can, but you might already be familiar. So in vivo coding is just page 105 to page 110. Process coding is also a good choice if you're looking for how something works, like in a case study. So after you read the chapter, again, you can choose just one type to read about, just to kind of do a bit of a jigsaw for the class to share out. Now, the next text that we have is this one, Qualitative Data Analysis and Introduction. So this book is based on qualitative genre. So I did include the chapter on mixed methods for those of you who are interested. So she has ethnography, critical ethnography, feminist approaches, grounded theory, phenomenology, and lots of other approaches. Now, within here, like I mentioned, not all qualitative researchers use coding. And in fact, she makes the argument that coding is very new and there's a strong qualitative tradition without it. So I just chose a couple chapters that I thought would be of most interest to you. If you're interested in reading something else, just let me know and I'll add that. So I added critical ethnographic approaches. Now, even if you're not doing a critical ethnography, if you're using a critical approach, you might consider reading this chapter because in this chapter, she shows you how to do thematic analysis. And thematic analysis is another very common approach. If researchers don't use coding, many of them choose to use thematic analysis. So if you wanted to read about that, you could read in chapter 5. Of course, I put phenomenology. I didn't include grounded theory, but if you have the access to the book if you want to look into that. So here are some newer qualitative approaches. some great ones here. You know, if you're interested in e-research, you could do that. Performance research, you could do that. And then here, I did include narrative analysis. There's also content analysis of text. Content analysis would be great. She put discourse analysis. So if you want to read any of those, you can look at that. So that is how she organizes hers, is she talks about it by genre. So I want you to choose one of those to read and make connections to your work, and then also make connections to other pieces that you've read within that same genre. Okay, so when you are making connections to the pieces that you've read, you can drop them in the applicable chapter there. Okay, so you will see this. This is a bit of a preview. You will see this next example in the Saldana chapter about coding. So he shows you this excerpt, and then he shows two different approaches to coding. So I just wanted to call out a bit here. So this first one is using words directly from the transcript. This is in vivo. So you can see tough time, that's the code. People pleaser, that's the code. So that is one approach to coding. Again, these are first round coding. This is what you do first. In the next lecture, we'll learn about what to do after you have collected those first round coding, or after you've done your first round of analysis. Now, these, correct me. So these could be either, these could be like descriptive codes. They're either descriptive codes or process codes. I can't remember what he said, but as you can see, instead of getting it straight from the text, it's whatever coding approach. Let me just check. Okay, these are the process codes, but in the chapter that you are about to read, he does also have descriptive codes, just so you can see the difference between the different approaches and how it addresses a different research question. So if you're using in vivo codes, think about what kinds of research questions that would be best for. And if you're using the process codes, think about what types of research questions that would be best for, just to start getting you to think about how to make the decision, and then how to give a solid rationale as to why you made that decision, which you all are getting so great at. Okay, so this is just a bit of, this is actually the jigsaw that my class did last year. So this is what you will be doing after you read about the different types of first round coding. So there's narrative coding, process coding, exploratory coding. So when you are reading about your different type of coding, focus on when it could be used, why, how it could be used, and examples of how it could be used. So I will. Yeah, so yes. So what I want you to do for this one is, when you are in perusal, and after you have read it, I want you to, on this page here. Oh, okay. So you can share, what did I say? What? Share when, why you would use this method, how to use it, and examples. Okay, so you can leave that as an annotation here based on whichever one you read about. So here's the link to the PDF, so you can choose one to read about, and then you can leave an annotation about that. So when, why you would use it, how to use it, and any examples that they give in the text. And again, they're only a couple pages. Okay. And that way we have like a big section. Okay, so here is a way for you to practice. So after you have read about your first code examples, or any other everyone else's examples, you can come back and practice giving a code or two for this example. Yeah. This is from the Garbage book, but I didn't have you read this particular chapter. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to show you before we do our readings for today and then a little bit of memoing is coming back to this article that I showed you with data collection, the interview study about students' perceptions of race and gender in STEM. So here you can see, and I will link this for you too, in case you're interested in looking more in depth. So here you can see the methodology, the research questions, of course, the context, participants, and data sources, and then a separate data analysis section, which I mentioned you don't always find, but this paper does have a data analysis section. So it's so important to be transparent about your process and how you did it. So here we included our interview questions that we used to elicit the data. And here you can see we talked about some background about the approach that we used and why. And then you can see first what we used for first round coding, descriptive coding, and then how we organized it and categorized it using descriptive codes. And then we extracted those and used open coding using both in vivo and concept codes for those. The research team who did that. Then after that, and this will be more into our next, what we will discuss in our final lecture for second round coding. We grouped the codes and finding 6 categories. And then we included a table of the categories, the definition of that category, and an example. So, and then a bit about our approach to defining STEM, researcher positionality, and then here is that table. So these are the categories, the definitions, and example quote. I will have to find where the codes that go with each category are. That's probably, I probably didn't include that in the final paper, but that is an example of how you might write up in a final paper your approach. Okay, so go ahead and do the Saldana and then choose your article. Okay, this is what is confusing me about the memos is the memos go with like the class period and not the perusals. So I just added this in. So this is our memo for this. Oh, no. This is our memo for perusal 6. This is our 8th memo. So now after you have read Saldana and you've read your Garbage chapter and you have thought about your articles, your methodology articles that you've read, this is where you can write a response, what you're thinking, questions that you have, connections, just a brief memo for you to think about that, any other thoughts or questions that you have. And again, you might not use all of these, you might do something totally different. You might insert an example and do a practice coding, but this is for you to just jot down some notes. Maybe it's a note for you to think about for your perspectives, maybe based on Saldana or something that you read, page numbers that you want to look at back at. But this is your memo number 8 that goes with perusal number 6. I'm so sorry. Bye.